If he would give us the invocation.
Heavenly Father, we are assembled together upon this roof, Lord, by your grace and mercy. Father, we conduct this meeting, Lord, let everybody continue, Lord, to put our hands in your hand, Lord. Let us continue, Lord, to build Marlboro County for a better place. Father, help us follow the direction that you have set for us. We ask this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, we have the agenda in front of us. We need a approval of agenda items.
Mr. Chair, before we approve the agenda, I noticed that we have an item number 7 on the agenda again. We haven't even had an opportunity to even meet about our local boards, commissions, and some committees. And I'm not being disrespectful to anyone, but we haven't even had a meeting.
All the information on those boards and commissions was sent to each councilman.
We got that.
And we can discuss this in executive session, if you would.
No, you can't.
We can't.
I mean, you guys have got to conduct yourselves in open meetings. There's a little bit of a move towards not doing that. I'm just going to speak up on the way out the door. But the information was provided to everyone. I mean, we can have a meeting. I can read it to everybody if that makes everybody happy.
Unfortunately, I do know how to read, and I did read through my information, and I'm not being difficult, but my reason for asking that is never have we had an opportunity to even look at those boards, look at those appointments, look at the dates some of those people have served on the board, look at the number of people who are serving on those boards, and look at some of those inactive boards. A lot of those boards' expiration have been expired. That's why I'm asking that.
Well,
and I know that you may decide to go on and vote yes, all of you can, but I'm going to stick to the fact that ever since I've been on this board, I said we should review those ordinance and those boards and commissions and those committees, and that's my say on that.
okay. Well, we know that your disapproval will go on record.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Along with Ms. Lawson, we have been asking for a workshop to discuss these boards and their regulations and everything. And we have been promised a workshop, but we have not been given. We have been given the information, yes, but we have not had a workshop to discuss it. And that's what she's asking, and I am asking the same thing.
Well, I do not feel it's necessary to have a workshop on this, but if we've got 2 council members that do, does anybody, I mean, if the consensus is that we want to have a workshop on this.
Consensus said in a 6-2 vote that we were going to do that.
We've already voted on it.
We've already voted on it.
All right, well, we will take this off, and we'll see if staff can come up with a workshop. We'll come up with a date. Okay, so amending agenda item number 7.
Are we doing 7A and B or just 7A?
I believe it was referred to both 7A and B. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Also, you're also taking off the request from the Workforce Development Board.
I think we need, in that effort of PD workforce, that do not have a direct impact on the county council. That come up pretty much from the PD call. I think that that should be left alone. We are more focused on the county economic development partnership board. So I think we just do the amendment on just 7A and leave 7B as stand.
Okay.
Can I make a comment? Could we, here in the recommendations, as consideration from A is to, if we appointed that board and we decide to change it, we can always, it's our appointment to change it, but could we move forward with fulfilling this board? And if we change all the ordinances, we move anything, if we have to take them off or put them back on, that would be up to us. If we change the
After the workshop, you're saying?
after the workshop, could we move forward, because they've asked 2 or 3 times, at least they can conduct business, who know was in the place, and then whenever we have the workshop, if we need to change, we can always move them out of the positions, because this is a recommendation from them, and I understand Ms. Lawson's thing, but it's just a request, for that, to fulfill that board and still have a workshop, and if we do any changes, then that, we can change it however we need to, but at least it will allow business to move forward in the partnership board.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's a misunderstanding that we're stuck on the Economic Development Board recommendation, but we wanted to look at all the boards that we under.
Well, if it's 2 separate issues, we could go, if staff could go ahead and put together a workshop for the boards and commissions
All of them.
in general, but go ahead and at least fill these 2 boards as they're requested here, and as Councilman Steen just said, we can come back and visit those boards after that workshop. Would that be agreeable to?
You can make the motion, and we vote on it.
Okay, well, in that case, we don't need a change in the,
Yes, you do need to change it. We do need to vote.
are we going to vote on the Marlboro County Economic Development Partnership Board?
Did you provide a motion, or you did not?
No, I didn't provide a
Okay,
motion.
it was just for information.
Right.
I would approve that we, approve agenda items as presented and just let it go to that board.
Is there a second?
No, question again.
Yes, ma'am.
I did not say that I was approving the agenda. I made a comment about the fact that the agenda has, items on the agenda has been presented to us without us having the meeting or workshop to even discuss all of our boards. If that's one of the boards, fine. I understand you, Mr. Steen says, let's maybe go ahead on with the appointment if we have to move. But I wanted to make clear that I think that we need to consider looking at those ordinances. Some of y'all have, if you haven't read, some of those ordinances have been in place since 1998, and I am wanting to move forward. I know that it won't change, but I didn't get on this council to be a bobblehead, and I
Okay.
will not do that.
So we'll move this conversation to number 7. We'll move on with the approval of the agenda items. At number 7, we will either set up a workshop and discuss this further at that time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we'll set the agenda as written with the amendment of omitting 7A.
Okay, is there a second?
What was that motion, Mr.
Well, we already have one motion
But I
to,
did,
I'm making a motion to approve the agenda as written with the omission of 7A.
and did you not already have a motion on the floor?
I had a motion, I didn't have a
Okay,
second.
you did?
Oh, okay, and you did not have a second. Okay, is there a second for Councilman Wood's motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? So that's 2 against 5. So motion does not carry. So we will go through with the agenda as is, and we
You still have to approve the agenda in some format. You still have to vote to approve the agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I reinstate my motion to approve agenda as written.
There a second? Second. All in favor of approving the agenda as is? Motion not carry, it's 3 to 4. Okay, so we don't have an agenda.
Are there abstentions? Are there a vote no? You know,
Yeah, you got to find if there's a vote.
Yeah, okay. All against voting for the agenda as is.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something before we
Yes.
move forward? Ladies, colleagues, and I'm speaking from one person individual. We wait a month for a meeting. If we do not pass this agenda, everything that's on this table, that we gotta wait another time for a meeting. Everybody's time is very valuable. This county need our unity. Right now, we are just discussing to approve an agenda so we can continue our business at hand. There's nothing that on this agenda that would be, is so devastating that we cannot go and revisit. That's only, that's what all I'm saying. We need to move forward. We're never gonna agree on everything. But one thing we do need to agree is to conduct business. And this is business. We do need to conduct business as we are being appointed to. If we got concerns, objection, or so forth, that is just one issue. But we got a lot on this table that we must, as council members, fulfill.
Mr. Chairman.
Wait, I think Councilman Stroman was saying something.
I'm saying, I don't see the issue. I mean, you've got a five, you've got 2 against, and you got everybody else 4. So everything is already passed, I thought.
No, it didn't pass.
Yeah, Ms. Lawson, we did not approve.
Do we have the numbers to
Everybody
pass
else
this?
approved the agenda.
On the motion to amend it for deleting 7A, you only had 2 in favor.
2 nays, right?
That's 2 in favor.
Right.
There's 7 members present.
Right.
Whether you abstained or objected. For approving the agenda as presented, you have 3 in favor. So
3 in favor.
Yeah,
then you
that's right.
got 4
Yeah,
that didn't vote, or what if...
Were there any abstentions?
We didn't know if they abstained or if they objected.
Yeah, I called for not in favor, and there were 4 against.
Well, the only thing that we got in question is A, right? The only thing is A. I mean, everything else, so if we do it, 7A, take that out, then we can go on with business and we can have a work session and.
So moved.
So moved. That's what.
That was the motion I made.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna support Mr. Woods. I think the county and the people watching these meetings that watch them live, I think they're getting a little bit tired of these ridiculous things that come up, that we stop everything. And I know everything is important and stuff, but we're elected to make decisions for all the people in this county. And as Mr. Woods said, we may have 1 or 2 items that we disagree with, but there's a lot on this agenda tonight, our budget and a lot of other important things. And I think the people in this county deserve better than what we're doing. I think we do need to move ahead. As Anthony said, there's a lot on there that can affect the people in this county in a positive way, that we need to go ahead and move and let's get out of these stalemates to where we're stopping the whole meeting. That's my take on it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the agenda omitting 7A? Who's in favor of that? All right, that's unanimous. For who's all here? Dr. Johnson, of course, is absent. Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. All right, moving to the public hearing. Ordinance number 833, an ordinance to amend the agreement for the development of a joint county industrial business park of Dillon and Marlboro counties so as to enlarge the park.
Mr. Chairman, this is the ordinance you've been reading now. This is the 3rd reading tonight with Dillon. This is a legal arrangement with Dillon. We've also done them with Darlington and Florence to allow the other county to offer a higher level of incentives that they're going to offer to an industrial prospect. In return, when we have one, they'll repay the favor. There is no cost to the county, and we typically get 1% of the revenue they collect back, which is nominal, but it's just standard practice. We've done many, many, many of these, and we would recommend that you all approve the 3rd reading when you get to it down on the agenda.
Okay, and that is just a hearing? No?
You vote down when you get to the old business.
Okay, moving to the approval of minutes from March 14th, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the minutes of March 14, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, that's 7. That's unanimous. Dr. Johnson absent. Any abstentions or against? All right, moving to the presentations. We have presentation with PD Coalition, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and Child Abuse Prevention Month. Hey.
I won't be before you long. The PD Coalition, we're located at 108 South Parsons, just in case anyone didn't know. We have a couple of events coming up for sexual assault awareness and child abuse prevention. On this Thursday, which is the 13th at 2 p.m., we will have Nia's Lemonade stand in front of our location on 108 South Parsons. For those of you that don't know, Nia, she is in the 5th grade, I think, 4th or 5th grade, and what she does, she hands out lemonade. The price of it is love, is what she says, and if you want to donate to her cause, that's totally optional. There is a surprise, I think, planned for her, so it would be great if everyone could come out and support her. She is doing this of her, she wants to do it, no one asked her to, so I think it's great that she's a little person wanting to support a cause such as this. So she is Nia's Lemonade stand against child abuse, so that's on Thursday. On the 29th of this month, so the last Saturday, at the First United Methodist Church, we're holding a self-defense class for women. It is free, lunch will be served. You will have to register. So if that's something that you want to attend, it'll be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on the 29th. All you have to do is give us a call at the PD Coalition and we can get you registered. If you want any more information, I do have flyers back here on the table that shows what our services are, how you can get in contact with us, so on and so forth. And before I leave you, one of the thoughts that we are kind of carrying and running with and want everyone to understand is that every 68 seconds in the United States of America, someone is being assaulted. Someone is being raped. A lot of people don't like the R word, but you know it is what it is. So every 68 seconds, someone, male or female, is being raped in the United States. In their lifetime, 1 in 4 women will have experienced some sort of sexual assault. 1 in 5 men will have experienced some form of sexual assault. So the way to break the barrier, the way to stop this epidemic of what's going on against men and women is to speak up if you say something. Make sure that you're knowledgeable about sexual assault, child abuse. Don't be closed-minded to the issues and things that are going on. I have a lot of people say, I didn't know, it's never happened to me. Well, it could definitely happen to you. So I just beg everyone to be knowledgeable. If you have questions, we're always ready to answer your questions. There's plenty of literature that we have that you can read on your own time. So just become knowledgeable, make sure that you're aware of what's going on in the world, especially what's going on in Marlboro County. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, moving to the operating budget for 2023 to 2024. Mr. Administrator?
Mr. Chairman, as we've done every year for the last 7 years, we start out our budget process with an overview of where we are and where we're starting from, and issues issues or opportunities that we see as we begin to move forward and get into more detail. I apologize for doing them in the back. We can make some room in the front there if we need to. See if I can get this on. Okay. So as I stated earlier, we usually start the process with sort of set out ground rules and of course encourage everybody to ask questions as we move forward with it. So just for everyone's, to make sure we're all on the same page, we'll be using several common terms that throughout this when I'm talking, and I oftentimes forget that I do this all the time and other folks might not. So obviously, you hear the term fiscal year. Some people call it physical year, but it's actually fiscal year. And for Marlboro County, it's July 1st to July 30th. So next fiscal year will start July 1st and it'll end next year, June 30th. Recurring expenses, this is an important term you'll hear talked about. These are things that keep eating, as I like to say. So, if you have a new position or something that you're going to have to keep paying on and on and on, that's a recurring expense. And we always have to be on the lookout for those.
because those are the things that make the budget creep up. Capital expenses are one-time expenses, so that might be like buying a piece of equipment. But you have to be careful there because they often have recurring expenses associated with them. So if we go buy a sign and there's an operating maintenance agreement for $4,000 a year, which there actually isn't, but that would be a recurring expense that gets tied to it. So you got to watch that too. Obviously revenue is money we take in. That's inbound money. Most of what we take in has some restrictions on what it can be used for. A fund, we talk about the general fund, we talk about like rural fire fund or EMS fund. Those are just groups of accounts that are grouped for like purposes. So the general fund is general government. It'll have everything from the treasurer's office to the sheriff's department to codes enforcement to all these different pieces and parts that make up general government. So for tonight's discussion, we'll be focusing on the general fund because that makes up the large part of our entire budget. And fund balance, you hear that talked about a lot. Those are reserve funds, fund balance. Those are funds that we have over and above expenses. So that's sort of like your savings account. It's important to note that you know there's a target, there's a certain amount you want to have. That target's 5 to 6 months. So if you take the entire general fund budget and divide it by 12 months, you want to try to keep 5 to 6 times that. That's what auditors recommend, and that's good financial management. Right now, we have about 5.5 months, according to the audit we just heard. Any questions so far? Okay, so the general fund budget, I did round these up to 5,000, so we're not talking about $4 or $3. This is basically where you started out when you passed the budget last year. So you can see you ended up about 380 out of reserve to balance the budget. And you know, it hadn't been that long ago, but we spent many different little workshop call meetings, like back and forth, trying to fine tune this and make it work. And that's where we ended up with 380 out of reserve. And last year, you know, I made a big point of it, and I'll make it again this year, is that, you know, as you see things like in the sheriff's department where they're able to pay more, they can keep people. And when you keep people, you have every spot full, and you don't have this, you know, when you have vacancies, you're saving that money, and it creates a little bit of buffer there. So if something runs over, that covers that. And in past years, that's kept you from having to go very deep in the reserve. But now we're seeing much more of every spot filled and all expenses being actual to budget. So, you know, in the past, we might say, hey, we're going to budget 350 out of reserve, and we end up using 100. Now you're going to see where it gets closer to the actual amount you budgeted for. So you have to be mindful of that. Last year, we did have 2 amendments during the year. One was $90,000 to buy 2 patrol vehicles. This should have no impact on next year because it'll either be paid this year out of federal inmate revenue or out of the fund balance for this year. We also want to make sure the things we do in a certain year get kept in that year so they don't carry over something into next year and start off, you know, at a disadvantage. And then we have $50,000 in library expenses where the state funds part of the library operation, and that just was a correction that was made, and it has no impact. The money came in, the money went out. Any questions there? Okay, so I've done this about the same about every year. So right now we start out with about 13,855, and then what I'm going to do is go through expenses that on the first run through by staff we see that potentially will be on next year's budget. So things that we see that we need to add to next year or things that we've been told are going to change. So these are subject to verification or further verification, but some of them aren't. Some of them, like the first one, the insurance we pay, just like you've got homeowners insurance, we have general liability insurance, and it's going up $30,000. We had a number of recreation increases due to the fact that more people are playing. So if it costs this amount of money for an official or a uniform, if we have more people coming in, or you buy decent uniforms like we did this year, that's going to go up. So you see 40 there. The sheriff was able to get donated some canines and dogs. And those officers, we have to pay overtime based on state law that requires us to do that, because they have to take care of the animals. And it's a certain amount every pay period. I believe it's 8 hours pay period. I can't exactly remember.
8 hours.
We see overtime in the sheriff's department, we've talked about it going up. Now, there's a trend in this last month that hopefully will hold out and that'll go down some. But for the first pass, that's the amount that's over and with all the fringes added into it. So we need to be mindful of that when we go to the second pass, to make sure we don't need to add more in there and be able to plan for that. Our workers' comp insurance is going to go up $100,000 next year. Now, workers' comp, if you have noticed over the years, or in business or whatever you're involved in, it'll go up and down because it's based on your experience. So if you have a lot of claims in a year, or you have somebody get hurt bad or something like that, it might make it go up the following year. So that's sort of what's going on here, is we've seen some increases in claims. And of course, we have a safety committee that meets every quarter or something like that to try to address that. But due to the nature of what we do, particularly law enforcement and EMS, you're going to have things happen. But that's a significant increase, obviously. The portion of employee health care that the county pays, that you all approve, will go up $30,000. Last year, you did a cost of living increase. We've done them every year in the past, and every year we usually do 6 months, and then the next year you got to catch the other 6 months. So that rolls forward. The retirement employer contribution, if you remember over the past 4 years or something, the state each year has gone up by 1% of what we have to pay into the system for the employees. And we believe this is the last year, but it's 1%. We've seen fuel go up both in the sheriff's office and the public works and buildings department. So we got to keep an eye on that when we go to the next pass. We've seen it just fuel costs more. And the sheriff's starting to have a full house, so he's got more people on the road. The detention center, we talked about this today, I wasn't in the meeting, but the food portion there has gone up, but that's somewhat tied to the federal prison thing, and that could be reimbursed, so we'll catch that on the pass-through, the next pass-through. So these are the things we've seen that jump out at us, that some of them are sure things. The workers' comp is a sure thing, the general liability, a sure thing. These other things we'll need to look at and see if they go up or down, but they are by category likely sure things. Any questions about that? Okay, so we'll do the same thing. Well, it's $595,000. So that's your increase.
You got some ballpark, that's pretty much accurate.
Well, it's as accurate as the ones on the right.
Okay.
So, yeah. It's the total of the other estimates. So, but I think that it's fairly accurate. When you have things like fuel costs and all that, it's easy for departments to say, well, we're going to cut on fuel. But, I mean, if gas prices are up and all that, and you want to do your job, public works, sheriff, whoever, you're going to be out there burning that gas. So unless, like, you don't care about saying, well, we're going to buy all electric vehicles next year, well, then I might say bring that down, but that's not going to happen. Okay, so we do the same, go through the same exercise for revenue. So first thing that we all know about is we lost revenue with the Mohawk leaving. So that, we estimate that to be about $520,000 in revenue that we're getting that we won't get. Now that's offset by what we will continue to get, because unless somebody, the good Lord, picked the building up and moved it out of the county, you're going to get taxed on what's down there. We did see an increase in revenue in intergovernmental funds, so that helped offset that loss. That's $310,000. But when you add all that together, you see a net decrease of $210,000. Now again, first pass numbers, well, actually probably second pass numbers. Occasionally, the state will pay things in quarters, so the fourth quarter hadn't come yet. Occasionally, there might be some change. Every year I've been involved in this, there's in the newspaper that the legislature is going to pay more toward the local government fund, and they had a little bit, I think, last year, but we can't count on that till we see it. That would help us greatly. We lost $500,000 or $800,000 in 10 years ago to that. So if you see, if all the things I've shown you come to pass, then you're starting out with a $1.2 million deficit. So pretty deep. And I'll go through some of the reasons that contributed to it, but a big contribution to this is you had huge inflation. And I think we got a pass on that 2 years ago, and then now it's catching up.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On this page about the deficit already, a little over $1 million. Where were these funds? I see the breakdown, I see that, I understand that. And I want to know that just because I'm just getting this package, I like to read through it, so I hadn't had ample enough time to read through this package to make any, what we call a knowledgeable statement about it. But I would be concerned about already being a deficit of $1 million.
Yeah, so it would. So typically at this point, when we're doing the budget, you'll see hundreds of thousands of dollars. You might see 6 or 7 at this point.
But when you see $1 million.
Oh, yeah. That's very important. Everybody pays attention this year to this. And the way, where does that come from? I think I'm kind of reading your lips. It can come from your fund balance, which is not a good thing to do. It can come from cutting some expense. Don't really know where you're going to do that. It can come from raising taxes. So, and I'll get into that part of it next. So, the state legislature passed a law a number of years ago that limits the amount of taxes the local government can raise. And it's based on the inflation rate, which this year was 8%, and then it's also adds some to it if your population grew. And as you know, the population didn't grow. This is something that's impacted by the census that I know you worked hard on, Ms. Paulson. So we basically have 8%. You also can use...
Sir, if more people had done their census, each household, each person who in this county could have had a $3,000. We could have had monies for each person who would have done the census.
Yeah.
And that's why we continue to lose funds. I stated that 2 years ago, and this again won't come around again to another 8 more years. But this is why we're always we didn't get our fair share from the state because we're not getting counted the way we should.
Well, I agree. I mean, if it's not accurate, it causes a problem. And here, if we were in Greenville, and you had an increase, you get 8% ability to raise taxes plus some.
Or Dorchester.
Yeah, so you also can go back 3 years. So every year they tell us how much you can go up. And you can add those up, but you can carry it forward. But the last 2 years, you had, about 5-6%, and you used it all last year to a 5 mil tax increase. So you really didn't have anything to carry forward. All you got is 8%. So that means you have the ability to raise taxes about 7.9 or 8 tax mills. And each mill now is worth $65,000. So I'm going to show you that. So if you were to go up on taxes the maximum amount allowed, then you would be running a $768,000 deficit. Now again, these are first pass numbers. We would hope that we would find somewhere to save or see something we hadn't seen, but these are pretty close. Been doing this a while. One thing to keep in mind is over the past couple of years, you've seen an increase in tax revenue because you now have a very much an accurate and impartial way of valuing real estate. In the past, you might live on the street next to somebody and their house is identical and it may have a value of this and yours may have a value of that. Now the valuation is based on, or the increases are based largely on if you sell your house. So if someone sells their house to somebody other than a family member, that becomes the value of the house. If you think about it, it's fair because it's a market value. It's what it's sold for on the market. So that goes on the books, and it's corrected a lot of this subjectivity in the tax value. Now, y'all vote every 5 years to increase everybody across the board. That happened 2 or 3 years ago. But that also was lagging, and so now that you're doing this, once everything turns one time, you'll have set it based on what it's actually worth. And that's a fair way of doing it. It's brought in some revenue growth in the past couple of years. The reason you don't You don't see it this year, it's pretty flat because the housing market is downturned. The interest rates went up, people aren't selling, buying as much as they were. And of course, you know, you get to the point to where everything's sold that's gonna sell and it kind of slow down, you know. If you sell your house, if your house was in your family for years and it was on the books at $30,000 in tax dollars, and you sold it for 75, it's gonna go to 75. But chances are, if you sold it again next year, it's probably gonna be 78 or 72 or 75, so you're not gonna see that. But that's one thing that's come out of recent county government is, you know, way of being fair. It's not about somebody's paying a lot less because they've had a house for 75 years or they figured out how to appeal it or something like that. It's a real fair way of looking at it.
Since we're talking about taxes then, I know you hadn't gotten to delinquent taxes in here yet, I don't know what's in here. If we have everyone I know that there's always a sale in October. I see the names of people in the paper with those taxes, with the houses from a 2-year period. And some of those are thousands of dollars, and some of them $300 or $400. Unfortunately, a lot of the people do not pay their taxes, and then it goes in default, and then you have the persons who are in real estate, they pick up that, and for a whole year, they hold these people strong to hold. I do know that the state has a program in place for anyone who has delinquent taxes, and it will go to 2026. They need to really be trying to get that. It's a housing program. They need to really try to get, and they can redeem their house themselves and pay those taxes. That would be revenue from our county, and there's still a lot of people probably haven't even paid that. They passed on March 15th, but that would be revenue for our county that we can get monies in here. And I know that people are strong. I know that the economy is not good, but that is one good way for people to get that money from the state to get their delinquent house tax paid. And that could be thousands of dollars for Marlboro County.
Well, the way delinquent tax works is, you know, obviously you get a tax bill and you try to pay it on time. If you don't pay it on time, then you get a notice. Then you get a certified letter. If you don't act on that or pay, then you get a sign in your yard, and then it goes to tax sale. If it's sold at tax sale, at that time when that money comes in, it gets paid to us.
Okay.
So that would help people keep from losing their houses.
Right.
More. Because we were talking about this in the budget meetings we've had of the staff is, motor vehicle revenue, when you look at the revenue, you see motor vehicle revenue going up and down. Somebody might not be buying cars, or a car might have moved, or a car might have got wrecked or whatever. But houses and real estate, they're not going anywhere. They're either going to pay on time or you're going to get it through delinquent tax. So the only thing the delinquent part does is delay it. So like if we're counting on getting that $1,000 in taxes out of this big fancy house and it goes delinquent past July, then that fell in the next budget year. So it's kind of a timing thing, but we ought to be collecting it one way or the other.
That's
and then, like you said, can help people get it before it's bad.
So, right. So I hope that if anyone out there needs to be getting that, it takes about 6 weeks for that to come through. It takes about 6 weeks for that process to come through. So I really hope and pray that a lot of people will go on and take advantage of that, because that program is in place to 2026 from the state.
That's good information, because if you don't pay back in that redemption period,
Right.
you lose your house. Okay, from expenses, we looked at expenses, and of course, we all know that we kind of played catch up over the last few years with public safety type things. So we've seen a good bit of money that's gone up with sheriff, detention center, and even though it's kind of squished down there, 911, we had some money there. But you know that, you've been a part of that, trying to get that, to hear those requests and act on those requests. So we've added a good bit of money to the budget in doing those things that sort of just keep building. So, none of the totals that you see tonight or anything have budget requests in them, but I did want to show you the sheet of budget requests that we've received to date, and that's usually the next phase of discussing the budget. So we have some from the Sheriff's Department, and of course the Sheriff and guys from the Sheriff. I didn't put a dollar amount on the SRO thing because the school district will reimburse us for that. You know, there's a need to tweak those salaries, but the school district they have a good arrangement with Sheriff McNeil, and they can cover that. But you can see those there. Our recreation director sees a need for a large increase there. Of course, we've got opportunity to sell you on that. We had a request from the solicitor, but I didn't have the dollar amount. We need 8 new vehicles in the sheriff's department and 3 new vehicles in the public buildings. The dollar amounts on that are just a flat out bomb, and we know that there's some grants and things that can help with that. So once we get to that second pass, we'll be figuring out how to handle that better. And then on the bottom, we have done a cost of living increase for employees, and that amounts in there as well. But you see, the problem here is you're going from wherever it was, from even with a max tax increase of 7.68, and then if you were to approve all these budget increase, that adds another 18.2 mils to it that you don't have. So it's going to be a tough year to decide what to do.
Is it mandatory that we do a cost of living increase for employees?
No. I'd highly recommend it, just to keep what you got and keep good people on staff. But, in a tough year, I've seen it when I was on council where it said, well, we're going to, Mr. Wilson, too, we're going to see where we are in December and we can do a budget amendment at the time if we need to. Done that before.
Okay.
Ms. Mullin,
Yes, sir.
you said that we're out about $885,000 over the $300,000 that we normally target is out of reserve, right? And what you just showed us, that's in addition to the $885,000, right?
Well, there's where you are right now if you don't raise taxes.
Is that, I'm saying, what I'm asking, is that including the $1.1 million we just looked at, the increases, all to be here?
Yeah, everything's rolled,
Okay.
yes, sir, everything's rolled up into the, yes, sir.
Okay.
So I had a couple of things that I brought up over the year, and I want to make sure I bring up on the way out the door. So grants, we've had a huge amount of revenue come from the sheriff's department with grants. We've had other people doing grants. We want, need to make sure that you understand that the impact of grants oftentimes isn't clear. Things that are a straight up donation even come with costs. Whether you got to pay insurance on something or you've got to have a maintenance agreement, things we talked about earlier. I strongly suggest that you all reinforce the policy of these things must come before council. And I also would suggest that they include a staff-prepared financial and operational impact analysis. And when I say that, I mean the finance administrator and HR and all those people prepare that. An objective, and then work with the department, whoever the department is. Here's the request, here's the impact now, here's the impact recurring, so that we make sure we understand these things before it comes to you all for consideration. It's just a good way of doing business.
A good way of doing business also is to hire a grant writer that knows all of these things that can almost take the pressure off of council, because if a grant is coming to the county, they will know the impact of the grant. They will know what financial responsibility for the county is, and they can go after these grants that can improve our county. The fact that we don't have a grant writer, we having a grant evaluator or a grant person, but we don't have a grant writer on staff that that's their job is to go out to these $1 million grants that many of these communities right near us are getting. It's crazy that we don't have a grant writer on staff.
Well, there's two parts of the grants, and I agree with you. There's the part of going out and finding them and researching them and handling them, and then there's always going to be the part of the analysis, and they should work together. I think when you get to the point of looking at what you want to do next year, a grant seeker and a grant person can pay for itself. So I agree with your idea.
I totally agree too. That's what I kept saying, because there are lots of grants out there for communities, especially communities such as ours, but you need to stay focused on what grants are out there. So I do hope that's something we will consider. I noticed when I looked at the website, I noticed the person's name is on there how is that person being a grant? What is that person doing on the website?
Probably a grant administrator. So once you have the grants, there's a lot of paperwork to keep the grants going. And that's probably over and above what a grant seeker would do.
Right.
And that's the finance person that helps with that.
Okay.
You have received a good bit of grants. You've received probably $6 million of grants in the last few years. You've received grants that aren't that glamorous, to build buildings or fix buildings and that sort of thing. So, you receive that. But the things to clean up the community, the things y'all approved in your initiatives, that's a huge amount of money there. And so the Council of Governments helps a lot with that, and they're a good one to use. But having somebody on staff would also help greatly to find more revenue for that, particularly for the extra things you want to do.
I will commend the city. They have someone that they use as a consultant, and he helps with a lot of grants, and they're getting some $1 million grants. I noticed because I attend their meetings. So that's something we do need to consider, whether it's on staff or consultant or what. But I do think that will help this county.
Yeah, the city uses Council of Governments, and there's two ladies that do that. I think this Council of Governments charges 10 or 15%. It comes off out of the grant amount. Even beyond that, I think there's a payback for trying to have somebody.
Mr. Marlin, doesn't also the procedure that most counties do and cities do the same is they tie the increase in grants that the grant writer brings in to their salary, and they are paid based on whether they produce right. And I assume that most of this stuff is going to come under a contract. They're not just going to hire somebody and say, you're the grant writer for Marlboro County. It's going to be tied to some type of contract. If they don't produce, then you don't want to keep them on the payroll.
Yeah, I think NETC's done that a lot, where they get paid out of the grant. I mean, the grants have allowances for administrative costs. So I think that's a discussion point before you get the third reading is, do you feel like you need to have somebody that's working just for you, or whether you find one of those companies that can do that. But I think everybody seems to agree. I'm not nodding that you need to take advantage of everything you can get, particularly for community improvement, recreation, those type of things.
Housing development.
That's it. Y'all can talk about that on June 3rd. There's things that are outside the county scope of stuff, but I mean, it's certainly something to talk about. I guess you can expand it. Other things is, to avoid the mid-year amendments, we did really good this past year. And we had the vehicle thing, and we had the library thing. Because they require the same sort of analysis as a grant. You just need to make sure you understand stuff. So this past year was a lot better than the year before. Then you can have it where, we're going to have this analysis, and this is how we're going to make sure it gets on the agenda, all those sort of things. And of course, every single decision must consider the recurring cost. I know in the 90s, the Clinton administration put out a thing called a COPS grant. It was one page. And you could get a cop, like for a Sheriff McNeil, y'all might remember that, like Clyde, they got one just like that. And everybody was getting them. But of course, when the grant left, you had to keep them, so you had to make sure you had the money to do that. One thing that is important for things that happen in the administrator's office and the sheriff's department and other places are that there are ways for us to get reimbursed. There are different things where the state and DSS subsidizes part of family court employees. Well, if that subsidy is decreased like it was last year, then we need to have a conversation about, staffing levels. We've had, obviously y'all passed something to charge McCall for overtime in the law enforcement coverage. At what point as Chief McNeil said, you got to respond, and what you're doing their job for them, and they have money of their own. When we're bleeding like we are. Something that we've talked some here is the medical care and transportation of inmates. We have a contract. I don't know if some of y'all remember the back and forth with the city over the city-county contract about 4 or 5 years ago. And it clearly states that we don't cover the medical costs for their inmates or transportation. And we've talked some about that, and we'll be talking some more about getting reimbursed for that. None of that's a problem when you're running a surplus, but when you're running a deficit. I did have some comments for the sheriff, or a couple folks met with West Park and all that about the federal prison inmates, and I do want to make a couple of comments. I think this is a good thing if we can handle these federal inmates without any new staff or expensive building or equipment modifications. We had a request from January 6th or 29th about adding some people to the jail. And then that's not in the recent request. But at the same time, I've been given something to sign to have the state come in and tell us what kind of staff level we need on there. Well, I mean, you know where that's probably gonna go. So you got to be mindful of that. And I think today, from y'all's meetings, and I'm looking at all of y'all, you know, it looks like about $250 a year based on your March billings. No, gross revenue. Gross revenue.
Gross will be somewhere around maybe 3, it'll be a little over 3. I'm on right now, it says $467,200,000 a year. 467 minus what we would be returning to the county. Probably the county would gross $137,000 or $150,000.
Well, this is something that, you know, everybody needs to be involved with and understand. I won't be here. You know, the March request y'all put in had 250, and we've seen about 40 or 50 coming out of the food that's paid out of the general fund that we'll reimburse, and now they know that. So I think it's just important to see that as gravy and be careful not to get it into covering recurring expenses. But that's for y'all to figure out, and I think, you know, y'all are figuring out as well. It's a new program, but it's something to be mindful of. And of course, today had a good meeting from one of my reports about having full transparency about the billing and how things work, so we all are kind of helping each other figure that out. With regard to the fund balance, you know, as I said earlier, if you get to the point that you don't have a lot of vacancies, you know, when Chief McNeil took over, he had how many vacancies, he started to fill that, you know.
And 16 vacancies.
Yes, we had a bunch of vacancies. So you're saving money that's really not there, because the next year you got to start the budget back up. So when you start to talk about using a reserve, you're actually going to use that reserve. So you got to be mindful of that. Inflation is difficult to predict, so you've got to protect your fund balance. I think you've done that for the most part. This year you've got a tough year where inflation's hit. You may have to come out of reserve for more than you're comfortable with, or more than you would normally be comfortable with. And again, I pointed out earlier that target, you know, of that reserve is 5 to 6 months of operating costs. Again, take the general fund budget, divide it by 12, and about multiply it back out by 5 to 6, and that's how much we need to keep on hand. We're about 5.5 months right now. So next steps, at least from my perspective, staff's going to do like they have done for the last 6 or 7, 10, or 12 years, and go back and start sharpening our pencil. I think Mr. Blackman coined the term, and we'll meet with departments, we'll meet with the sheriff's office, we'll get it as tight as we can to bring back to you all, for you then to look at it again, and then if you know, you need to meet with elected officials or department heads have some huge request, you know, before the next meeting, have an opportunity to hash those things out. You know, things like the grant idea, you know, that's when you put that in. And then at the second reading, at the next regular meeting, have a second draft. Now, if you remember last year, I don't remember, probably 2 or 3 call meetings between second and third where you're really trying to tweak it. So you always have that going on, and I would say you need to be prepared to do that.
Mr. Burnley, as you said earlier that a lot of the places you're gonna be here, what is your flexibility or your availability during this time?
Well, we can have a private conversation about that, but.
Okay.
My goal was to bring this to you like I have every year, meat and potatoes and ins and outs, and this is where you start. And Ms. Lawson, how you typically don't send it out ahead of time, because it's sort of that first look, and everybody sees it at the same time.
I like this,
And then the next time,
Right.
and we, I'm not answering your question, Mr. Wood, I'm sorry, I was going to try to get some feedback on this, because my impression has been over the years that you all liked playing the stack the blocks. It doesn't have to be done that way. But it kind of lets you get to where you can say, man, here's where we're starting right here. So I can set this up to where it can be done that way again as you move on and move on and move on with it. But it is a tough one. It's something that I've taken spent a lot of time with over the years. We've got good staff and got people that keep track of the pennies and the dimes and check behind them occasionally, but the strategy side of it and how you make this work, I think we've all worked well together to make it work for the people. until last year, I don't think you'd had a tax increase in a number of years. So you don't do it unless you need to do it.
I like the second bullet on when you say suggestions, that's gonna be with elected official with significant budget requests, so that's just a few of them.
It could be with whatever you want. I mean, I just type it out. I mean, y'all can hear from whoever you want to. Typically, department heads haven't come before you because there's usually been a trust level where if somebody wants $4,000 more to put carpet in their floor, you know, and you walk over there and they need carpet in their floor, that doesn't become a big 3-meeting discussion. You know, if somebody says, I want to change the entire way that we do our department and we want $280,000, then yeah, we need to be in here talking. We didn't have, I mean, I'm just kind of jump ahead, we didn't present all the budget requests, the little here and there, but there weren't a whole lot. The big ones I put on that sheet.
Okay.
Because we, again, I want to compliment the people that I work with and for and everything else. We've got a crowd over the last bit that don't typically ask for something unless they need it. And you know, when people do that over a period of time, you develop this relationship to where you take them seriously when they do, you know. So we didn't have a whole lot of, you know, off the wall increases. I mean, requests. Anyway, I'm sorry I got off on a tangent. Any other questions? So what we would ask you all is on the agenda, actually is in old business, I mean, it's in new business, to just approve it by title only, and that's procedure here and procedure suggested by the Association of County Officers. That's how you do it. And then we'll have you some a draft with the details when we get a second or the workshop.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve by title only?
Motion to approve.
You've got to do that in your
This
business.
presentation here. You did the
It's
presentation.
just a presentation.
So moving down on old business. Ordinance 833, an ordinance to amend the agreement for the development of a joint county industrial business park of Dillon and Marlboro counties so as to enlarge the park. This is the third reading.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chairman, from the public hearings. It's that ordinance that is a legal trade-off with Dillon County and Marlboro County.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that being this is an ongoing ordinance that we do every year, that we accept third reading of ordinance 833.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? It's unanimous. No abstentions. Any against? None. All right, unanimous. Ordinance 834, an ordinance authorizing Marlboro County to renew the agreement with the town of McCall to provide fire protection service within a designated unincorporated area of Marlboro County. This is the second reading.
Mr. Chairman, we have not had discussion with McCall. I would ask that you approve second reading, just keep it going. And I would make a suggestion, just a suggestion, that the Public Safety Committee, which was, I believe, Dr. Johnson, Mr. Odom, and was it you, Mr. Stroman? Who was on that committee? I know it's Jason Steen. Meet with some contingent of McCall just to make sure they understand it. I don't see there being any big change, but I think it'd be I understand the council's interest in having interaction like that. That would be a good thing to do. But for the sake of this agenda, I ask that you pass second reading to keep the process moving.
Motion to approve second reading on ordinance 834.
Second.
All right, all in favor? It's unanimous, no abstentions or none against. I'm moving to ordinance 835, an ordinance authorizing a lease agreement between Northeastern Technical College and Marlboro County with regards to the use of certain airport facilities. This is the second reading.
Mr. Chairman, I have sort of a dual recommendation here. Number one is we have not had any more details from NETC on this. So, I mean, I, as a staff member, am comfortable with you tabling it until we receive that. Or you could choose to pass it second reading and then table it, not pass the third reading. But we need details.
I thank you for bringing that point out, because that was going to be my concern. What kind of communication have you had with with Northeastern.
Yeah, I mean, it's, they apparently have received some grant money for this program.
Right.
We have, of course, heard that for a number of years. And we've met with the Airport Commission a couple of times, which is fairly active. They certainly need to meet with them again, but there has to be a proposed lease, to do this that you all have to approve. And I'm not comfortable with a third reading of that until that happens. And it won't hurt my feelings if you table it until we get that.
And then what type of expense will that incur for the county? That's what I want.
Well, you're singing my song. I don't, any expenses would have to be covered by them in the lease.
Those kinds of things. I just
Yeah.
want to be sure all of that's clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Whatever expenses that's going to be covered, if they're getting in the grant money, be sure that we're not going to be picking up some expense. That's the kind of stuff that I.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we table, ordinance, 835 to get some more information.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor? It is unanimous. None against and no abstentions. This will be tabled. Okay, new business, resolution 04-23-01. A resolution designating the month of April as the South Carolina Fair Housing Month for 2023.
It's brief if you'd like me just to read it. A resolution designating the month of April as the South Carolina Fair Housing Month for 2023. Whereas the County of Marlboro desires that all its citizens be afforded the opportunity to attain decent, safe, and sound living environment. Whereas the County of Marlboro rejects discrimination on the basis of race, religion, color, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status in the sale, rental, or provision of other housing services. And whereas the state of South Carolina enacted the South Carolina Fair Housing Law in 1998, and whereas April is recognized nationally as the Fair Housing Month. Now therefore be it resolved that the County of Marlboro does designate April 2023 as Fair Housing Month.
A question on that. How do we enforce if you don't have, someone don't have a safe environment? Say they have a landlord that's not doing what it's supposed to.
Yeah, if something, our codes department can get involved in situations like that. Now, fair housing situations are not county, county doesn't have any authority there. But if you got a situation where you had something that wasn't up to code, typically, that would be observed when there's an inspection to reconnect power or something like that. So that's sort of a loose answer, but there is some authority to do that. Of course, keep in mind that I imagine, I'm just taking my gut feeling, that if you looked at the percentage of housing in South Carolina, in Marlboro County, the large percentage of it is in one of the towns. So that question would be to their people as well. How do you do this? How do you check? How do you make sure? But like most things with government, it's complaint-based, until somebody brings it to your attention. Otherwise, you'd have to hire 15 people,
Okay.
Maybe not the right answer, but that's
That's
the realness of it.
Well, I just want a mechanism where the citizens can come and complain, know where to complain for something that's not safe. So that's.
We could get more information for that on it.
Thank you, because I
Yes, ma'am.
definitely want to hear more information on that.
Okay.
Because I get complaints about that myself. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, all in favor? It's unanimous. All right. 6B, resolution 04-23-02. A resolution authorizing the submission and acceptance of a JAG grant in the amount of $66,000 for the purchase of 12 new portable handheld radios.
Just from the information in the thing, this is a no-match grant by the Sheriff's Department to purchase these. So is there anything to add?
It is 10%.
It's a 10% match. Okay. So it's a 10% match. That 10% likely would, you're going to say, where does that come from? Is that a question? Where will we get that from?
Who we get it from?
So you could take it out of reserve, or you could overrun one of the budget items. That's what I would recommend. So if I don't have it in front of me, but they've got a budget for O&M equipment or or for purchase of minor equipment. You just take it out of that this year, and if that budget in there is $23,000 and it takes $6,600, you're just aware that that happened and you see that and you make that amendment. So I wasn't prepared to have a budget amendment there, but I guess it could have, whoever, if you wish to approve this, the motion should include approval of a budget amendment in the amount of $6,600 to cover the 10% match. And staff will find a place to pull that from and make you aware of it.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we'll accept resolution 042302 with the amendment of this $6,600 that will come from not the budget fund, but let the finance committee find where it will come from a line item to cover the 10% match.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? So was it, how many against? One against?
No.
Any abstention?
No, I'm in favor.
Okay.
Yeah, just, I think.
One against?
Just one.
Okay, it passes 7-1. Resolution 04-2303, a resolution approving financing terms through First Citizens Bank and Trust Company for capital expenses for the rural fire department.
Mr. Chairman, this is hopefully the last part of buying the air packs for the firemen. Remember, y'all approved to buy them that, and you approved for us to go out and get the best price for lease purchase financing. And so this last resolution included in your packet is just required by the bank to move forward with that. So we want to get that done so we can get these things paid for. We've already cut a PO for it because you approved it, but this will keep us from using the reserve up. This is a financing thing. So it's nothing new. It's just, if you've ever been involved in any kind of organization, the bank always wants a resolution from the board. If you had any more questions, Mr. Park can probably answer it, but that's basically it.
Move for resolution 042303.
Mr. Chair, once this is probably going to be approved, but once the firemen get their air packs, is it possible that some chief or somebody can come to let us see what they look like? Because I'm interested in what that will look like with the, and I mean, I'm glad that the firemen are getting what they need. I'm not knocking that, but I would like to see just what the air pack will look like.
And I imagine if you'd like, you could probably get one of them to host y'all to come out and to one of their meetings, and they'll run in a burning building with it. I mean, you can, I mean, they train is what I'm saying. So I'll make sure and make a note.
Have an idea of what
Yes,
it
ma'am.
looks like, and the public can see what it looks like.
Yes, ma'am.
With doing that type of expense.
Okay, we have a motion to accept resolution 04-2303.
Second.
There's a second. All in favor? It's unanimous. No abstentions or absent. Okay. Ordinance 836, ordinance to adopt the annual budget and to make appropriations for Marlboro County for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024. This is title only.
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Mullen did an excellent job of presenting the budget process. It is on title only. We're going to have several workshops and other pencil shopping and dates and times, so I would make a motion we accept the title only. First reading.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Any abstentions? Got one abstention, 7-4, 0 against. Any against? Okay. Okay, resolution 04-2304, a resolution authorizing submission of an application for a $2,500 grant from South Carolina Humanities to bring a traveling exhibit from the Smithsonian Museum on Main Street program to Marlboro County.
Mr. Chairman, this was brought to us by Lynn McQueen, who's over the museum. This allows, gives them money to bring in a traveling exhibit, and the exhibit is Innovation on Main Street, and it's about innovation and different things that have happened in rural communities. And so it's a $2,500 grant. There is no cash match. The only match is that you put it in your building and you can keep the lights on while it's in your building. So this is a good one. This is a good example of the grants like y'all talked about, the grant seeker, the little things here and there, as well as the big things. So I'd recommend that you approve it so she can move forward with that.
Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
All right, motion and second. All in favor? It's unanimous. No abstentions or against. Okay, moving on to appointments to boards and commissions. We have taken off the agenda. B is consideration of request by the PD Workforce Development Board for the reappointment of Ms. Rena McLean to the board.
Mr. Chairman, being that Ms. McLean is already on the board and she's willing and able to serve for another 3 more years, and there's nothing new. She already knows these situations, and she know about Ms. Dukes. I make a motion we accept this recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Is there all in favor? Oh, that's unanimous. No abstentions or against. All right, moving to the acceptance of bids. Acceptance for proposal for the demolition of the county-owned property on Broad Street, the Rest Stop project.
I'll ask Mr. Carabo to come up and give you that information.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, everybody should have a spreadsheet in their packet. Basically, that is the evaluation we did, the evaluation contractors for this proposal. In the proposal, we requested them to give us a cover letter with contacts and reps for the organization. For the experience part of it, we asked them for history of the firm with 3 references. We asked if there was any litigation with them or any managing principal in there. We asked for a proposed work plan and work schedule and a certificate of insurance. So the top part of the spreadsheet, the experience, we weighted by price was 50%. Experience was 25% and project completion was 25%. So we basically sat down in a room and we all evaluated, and this is an accumulation of evaluations. And we came to the conclusion that EMR Services, which is actually the cheapest contractor, had the best proposal. They met everything we asked for. I even called their references and they got glowing references. So staff's going to recommend that you approve EMR Services at $99,500. Just take any questions.
How long this bid or this stand for? Is it this practice for 30 days or the quote?
They'll be done in 30 days.
No, I'm talking about how long this practice is good for.
60 days.
60 days.
So once we give them the approval, then they'll start within 15 days of that, and then 30 days after they'll be done.
What area is this EMR service? What
They're in Thomasville, North Carolina.
Thomasville?
Yeah, they've done projects in, let's see, they've done elementary school in Greensboro. They tore down a hotel in Salvation Army in Wilson, North Carolina. They did asbestos and demolition in Rocky Mount, and they also did an asbestos and demolition at the University of South Carolina. And nobody had any bad things to say about them. They stuck to their schedule, and they did what they were asked to do.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve staff recommendation of the EMR Services for the demolition of the county-owned property on Broad Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Question.
We've already called for.
Discussion after that.
Yeah, I got to call for discussion.
Oh, go ahead. I'm just not sure that, that we should spend that $100,000 there right now at this time. I know we need to start somewhere with that. This is part of the ongoing recreation project. But I'm just not sure right now with everything that we have going on, with all the different pieces moving around with everything. I'm just not sure do I want to start just demolishing that area out there. There's some things out there. There are units out there. There's all kind of things out there that we may want to discuss. What are we going to do with that property? Do we want to bid it out to citizens? And I think it's 3 20-ton AC units on that property that's in working order. There's a lot of little logistic things that I just don't think is the right time to immediately go into demolishing that building. We have not even, as a council, we haven't even visited the site. We haven't looked at anything. We trust staff, and we do trust Mr. Mullin on that, but I just don't, right now, I know we're gonna go forward with that project, but I don't think that's right now is the right time.
I agree with that sentiment, Councilman Stroman. We keep calling this recreational project, but this is not a recreational project that we're engaging in. And to purchase the building and then to spend another $100,000, we're just continually eating that free money that was supposed to be designated for recreation. And I don't see the land of recreation in the $3.5 million that we're allocating towards the golf course. The other $400,000 that we're allocating towards a building to tear down, I just don't see the lens of what we established and what we started when we first engaged this particular project. So I agree that spending that $100,000 right now is almost unnecessary. When there are other projects that could be strictly for recreation that can help build the recreational activities for our citizens, that $100,000 could be geared towards something that would be more user-friendly for our citizens.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I do believe that several months ago, the process of this whole complex, including the golf course, all the recreational activities we wanted to go, the rest area on Broad Street, the area out at the lake, we approved all of that stuff with a 7-1 vote to move ahead. And I don't see right now why we need to stop when we have already voted to proceed ahead, and 7 councilmen voted for everything. We had, Mr. Munn laid out a plan with everything they were going to do. We all had the option to approve it or disapprove part. Part of it we did take out. But everything that we're doing now is complying with a vote of 7-1 that this council made several months ago to go ahead with this whole project.
Mr. Alden, with all due respect, we are intelligent men and women, and just because we made a decision does not mean that we can't take another look at the decisions that we made. We just heard a fine budget projection of $1.5 million deficit that we're going to be experiencing, and we're talking about throwing away money on a building. Just because we made the decision, and I agree that vote was in place, does not mean that we can't go back and relook and take a different look at decision that we made. I'm pretty sure you reevaluate decisions all the time. So what's different in this process of reevaluating a decision that we made that now we might can see another way forward and another path forward? What's wrong with reevaluation?
Mr. Chairman, I don't really see where this year's budget, next year's budget comes into play in here. We're not going to be able to divert this money, this ARS money. This ARS money was designated for recreation. It's not going to affect our 2024 budget. We're not going to be able to take 1 cent out of that budget, out of the ARS money to help us on the budget. We're going to have to get the budget right ourselves by doing a lot of work on it and workshops and everything else. I just don't see, when we all sit back right there in that meeting in a closed meeting We went through everything, and we went through line item by line item, what we were gonna do, and approved it. And I don't see anything that's changed that where 4 people or 5 people is gonna change their mind on what we all agreed to.
Speak for yourself,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
There's two sides of this coin. When Mr. Alderman come over and said nothing changed, something had changed. You know, when things had changed. You know, that's why I asked the question to Mr. Doug, how long this was good for, and he said 60 days. You know, so even if we do not table it, this meeting here, like I said, one of my pet peeves, we have so many doors open, and we continue to keep opening doors and walking out the bar and leave the door open. Too much stuff will come in. We got 60 days, so the hurry, it don't have to be a vote of yes today. Mr. Johnson make a valid point, Mr. Strong, we all make valid points, you know, so it's not I got 1 point, you got 1 point, you got 1 point, but like I said, we do have time, and back when we did this agreement, 71, we always up under the impression that Mr. Miller would be one of the leaders of the ship, okay, and that is when a key wheel in the spoke is taken out, things do change. Whenever we as a committee have get another administrator in, we want that person also to have some input, whether it's Doug as the interim or a new administrator, whenever that time comes. You know, we can take a step back and re-examine the whole concept. You know, we don't have to make a decision tonight. That's the only thing I'm saying. We got 60 days still from this day here. And in that time, you know, we all might come to the table and say, okay, now let's go and move forward. So if we make a decision tonight, I don't want to see us to prolong, but yeah, I don't want to see get to a point where we don't have to make an answer, a decision tonight, Mr. Chairman. You know, because things have changed. You know, things are not the same as it was in January or December. Things have changed.
And I do want to go on record too that those decisions were made prior to my coming on council, so I didn't even have a chance to even look at those proposals. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
And if we could go and just set up a walkthrough of that building. There's certain areas of that building we could revitalize. We may can change the facade of the building. We can do a lot of things that may be even cheaper. But you have to give yourself an opportunity to take a look at that. And I know we want new. I know what the emphasis on new projects and stuff. But I just think that for us to tear down that building and not one council person has walked through it, I think, you know, that would just be wrong at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd go a step further. I would even entice, I know one of the several items we would think about doing to have a food truck sitting all around. I would make an invitation now to all the food trucks in Marlboro County to come and use the area for free to see what they enjoy, see how we have an early look, a cheat sheet of looking at it, and see how that come out. If it pan out all well and good, we know we can gain even more, because then we can say, okay, it looked good, it got good reception from the community. But like I said, we all know that when perception is one of the biggest things that we must have. If all the food trucks in one location, then we as a team can say, okay, this look like this might work. If it don't, well, let's hold on, because the building's ours. We can do what we want with it whenever we want to. If it be 2024, you know, but we do have time where we just tell all the food trucks in the area and surrounding area, look, this is the space, come mark your territory or whatever you want to use for free to build the interest. So when people in the community, McCall, Clyde, wherever, hey, let's check that out. Instead of us riding around, where so-and-so will be at today, anybody know? Everybody got one side they can go to. You know, that's just my $1.50.
Mr. Chairman. Yes. I think, you know, we're setting a bad example when we're asking contractors to bid on projects that this county approved 7-1 to demolish the building. And we advertised it, whatever the guidelines was. We had contractors from all over North and South Carolina came in, inspected the building, and made a valid bid on what it was cost. The low bid is EMR, I assume, that Mr. Carabo said. I just think, we're setting a bad example to ask companies to come in here and take time out of their busy schedules and bid on something that this council approved. The conception of tearing that building down, landscaping it with trees and all that, that is going to be much more attractive than, as Anthony says, get these food trucks to go set up over there and sell whatever the product is, I just think, we were all in this concept. Nothing has changed on the concept. The concept was going to be we were going to clear that property, we were going to landscape it, and we were going to make a rest area and an area for food trucks to come. Nothing has changed on that from that 7-1 vote. What has changed is we as a committed council, 7-1, voted that we wanted the building destroyed or taken down, and that we were going to take the lowest bid. And we got these contractors to come from all over North and South Carolina to put in a valid bid. I just think we're setting a bad example when, what's the next group that say, well, we're not going to bid on anything Marlboro County's doing. They want to honor it. I went over and spent a day going through a building that I was going to tear down, and then now they've come up and decided they don't want to tear it down. That's just my opinion.
I do believe that the building is a liability, and it does need to be torn down, whatever we do.
How many citizens have we spoken to about a project that's supposed to benefit them? I've spoken to at least 75 different citizens about a project that we're proposing for them. We're talking about something that we are directing, but we haven't even spoken with our own citizens about what they want to see with money that's allocated towards them. If those companies put in a bid and we halt the process, if we put it back out, those same companies are going to come and do their evaluation and submit bids. This process is not going to stop a company from looking at Marlboro County and submitting a bid if we put it out. Let's be real and let's be honest about it. We don't have to be in a hasty rush to do anything. Councilman Wood said something important. This whole, juncture was spearheaded by Mr. Monoman. He presented to us these options. You all voted on most of those options. Now Mr. Monoman is not going to be here to see those options through. It behooves us to take a step back and say, okay, let us take a step back, because there might be a different route that we can go to get to a better place with new eyes, with new lens. There is no problem with saying, let's take a step back for a moment. And reevaluating plans that we did, most of council voted for, but it doesn't do anybody any harm to take a moment step back and say, let's reevaluate.
If we got 60 days on it, then, if everybody wants to take a tour through it or whatever, that's fine with me. I don't care about, if we got 60 days, let's table it, let's go look at it, and, I want to stay on board with the program that we started with, unless somebody can show me something better, okay? But if we got 60 days, then we ain't got to do it tonight. Let's go look through the building. If there might be something we can salvage. If we can salvage it, then let's tear it down. So let's try to do something, though. If we got 60 days, let's try to come to a decision in the next 30 days. And that way we can move on. Let's don't let it just stop it. Let's go ahead and make an appointment to go out there and look at it, what we're going to do, and come on back to it. Let's don't drag it out.
Okay, I will add this, that we cannot go back and re-vote on something that we've already voted.
Right. But if they go out there, let's just say, the only thing that I'm saying, like there's air conditioning, instead of doing away with them, let's take them and maybe put them for sale or something, if something's worth keeping. But other than that, I want to stick with the plan that we said, but I got no problem with looking to see if something we can salvage.
Mr. Carabo, I'm sure you worked with all the people that came in and put these bids. What was their interpretation of the building and anything that was salvageable in the building?
We had the air conditioning checked out by local contractor, and they're not worth saving.
So basically everything that's of value.
We ran through the building with the local contractors, D.T. Turner, our building superintendent, anything that we thought we could salvage, we went through and had it checked out to make sure. And there's nothing.
So it's actually a moot point. I don't see the purpose in, any councilman walk through a building that's dilapidated, falling down. It is a hazard to any citizen. I'm sure if any citizen walks through that building and something falls on them and everything, we are gonna be liable since it is a county building. I mean, I just think, the vote's not gonna change. You can talk about all these pie in the sky things that we can do later on, but that vote's not gonna change. We voted 7-1 to put a rest area on Broad Street to attract tourists and people coming through Marlboro County, and also to set up a food truck vending area that was landscaped beautiful where they could sit up on the thing, and none of that's gonna change.
Mr. Odom, you saying none of it's going to change, like we are almost held hostage to decisions we made 6 months ago. We're not held hostage to those decisions. We can put out another plan if we wanted to. So it's not that we held, yeah, we did vote, but it's not that we held hostage to votes of a plan that we made when there was other information not available. We didn't know Mr. Mullen was not going to be the county administrator to see this project through. There are things that have changed the lens of what this project can be. To say that we voted on something 6 months ago, and because we voted on something 6 months ago, if you put in your GPS the wrong direction, and it continue to tell you that you're going wrong, you're going to continue to follow just because you put it in like that. We can go back and have some hard looks at some of the decisions that were made, and if it is appropriate to make some changes, I think we can make some changes. That's all I'm saying.
I think it'll be a year before we can go back and visit.
We also voted, when we did this, we also voted with going on a 50-50 match. Now
Exactly.
we're going 100%.
Exactly.
At this. And so you're talking about putting $100,000 in, and I know we came back and we said we're going to scale down what we can do with the money that we have. Now, I do realize that. However, if you're talking about $100,000 that initially would have been $50,000, you know what I mean? So why not just to take a look? I mean, like Mr. Blackman suggested, 30 days, take a look at it, 60 days, get it done in 60 days. I mean, we've got 60 days to do this. There is just no reason for this to be priority right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let's get one thing straight right now. Marlboro County is going to have an administrator. Mr. Mullen, unfortunately, he has decided to go another direction. The decisions we made were not based on whether Mr. Mullen was going to be here. It was based on the presentation that he made to us, and we voted on that presentation. There will be an administrator sitting over there 60 days, 90 days from now, but our decision was not based on whether Mr. Mullen was the administrator or John Doe was. And you're right, nothing.
Yes, it was.
The project is going to go through because we all voted 7-1. This is the project that we wanted. We cut things out of the project that we didn't want, but we sit back in that room and we hashed everything back. Mr. Mullen gave us a limited list of stuff that we wanted to do, and we all agreed this is what we want to do, and we voted 7-1. And whether Mr. Mullen's there or John Doe is sitting there 6 months, it's not going to change one thing. That project is still going to go through, just like I said, because the council's not going to vote on it again. We've already voted 7-1.
Let me give you an example.
Councilman Steen
Yeah, for the sake of time, I make a motion, we table it for 30 days to the next, I mean, we're at a stalemate. I mean, we're not gonna get anything accomplished. I mean, so I make a motion, I changed my original motion to say we table it for 30 days.
I second. And we got a second. All in favor to table? And it is unanimous.
Hey, Mr. Mullen had a question, Mr. Chair.
No, first of all, I'm flattered you think everything's going to collapse when I leave. But, yeah, there are a couple of good points there. You don't need any more buildings. You got 1 million square feet of publicly owned buildings in Marlboro County, and you don't need any more buildings. But I understand you want to look at it. And the point I wanted to make was that, yeah, you went into this, we had a meeting with the city, and they said they were for it, and they used their prerogative to change their mind within 30 days.
We did.
And so I understand, the desire to be able to change your opinions on things, but that didn't help us any. And, you know, we had a $650,000 budget, and you spent $280 on the purchase, spent $10,000 to evaluate the environmental and the asbestos on it, so we know what's there and not there. And then the bid was, I think, $100 to tear it down. So that just gives you an idea, put in your brain, that there's about $260 left there. And when I'm jumping ahead to my report was gonna be that, you know, perhaps you need to look at whether you can create a situation where you can use the currently paved portions to go ahead and open up the food trucks. And if you did tear it down, which I would have recommended just for the liability of having to maintain another building that leaks, then you could decide, then you'd have to back up and say, okay, what can we do for the money we have? Do we want to apply for PRT grants that are significant, that could turn this, that you could use to make it what you wanted to make it, but it takes a year to get? So tear it down, and y'all table that, that's your call. But even if you don't tear it down, make it where you can use it now, to Councilman Wood's idea, and then proceed with seeking those grants that you apply for in the fall, I believe, and awarded next year to do it, to replace what the city was going to do. And then also it'll limit your, you having to add any money out of the ARP that you already want to use for other things. That's all. I just want to provide you with that information. And we'll certainly find, anytime anybody wants to go look at it, if you want to go as a group, that creates a quorum situation. If you want to just go by there and look in less than quorum, things are, it doesn't matter to us, we'll give you the key or we'll leave the door open.
I have looked at it, and it does need to be torn down, but, and then I think we could refigure on how to spend our money without a partner, or with grant money, or maybe the city might come on board, but at least we would have got far enough down the road to get that building torn down and there'd be a vision there.
Mr. Money,
But
I
we-
got the opportunity to look in the building.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. We'll get together. Y'all just give me a call for the end of the week.
Was the demolition including taking up the pavement?
Yeah, I believe it was everything.
Okay,
And
so it was, okay. So
And
there might be something we could, at some point, save the pavement, tear the buildings down, see? So I don't know till we look at it, but I'm just saying that might be an option.
Yeah, I mean, I would have torn the building down, the pad down, grassed it where it's grass. And then I would go, this was in my other part of my report, I would have gone to the Department of Transportation, the CTC, to see if they would extend that. So there's an alley on the plat, that, so if you're coming down Fayetteville Avenue and you stop at the stoplight, there's an alley that goes down there, is to create that entrance, because it wouldn't be safe in and out without having that easy way to come in and out on the light. And then if it's grass and you're waiting on the grant, then you've got grass and you're waiting on the grant. And grass doesn't require a whole lot of insurance or patching the roof and all that, but, you know, it's something to consider when you revisit it.
Okay. All right, we're moving down to the reports. Finance report. Mr. West Park.
Mr. Chairman, council members, Mr. Merlin, you have before you the report for the first 9 months of this fiscal year. General fund revenues for the 9 months ending March 31, 2023 total $10,722,213. In comparison to $9,807,878 for the 9 months ending March 31, 2022. General fund expenditures through March 31, 2023 total $10,399,256 of a $13,904,125 budget, or 74.79% of budget year to date. General fund expenditures total $8,480,455 for the same 9-month period ending March 31, 2022. In conclusion, revenues are up in comparison to the prior year, but expenditures are much higher than they were in the prior year in comparison. So I don't know if there's any questions regarding the report, whether it's revenues or expenditures that people had to talk about this year.
Mr. Parks, what are your projections ending this fiscal year?
You know, I think our projections are at the end of this fiscal year that we're going to use those reserve funds that we've included in the budget because our expenditures are higher at this point. We're normally not at 75, we're almost at 75% of budget at this point in time in terms of expenditures, so that's a big concern. It's that those expenditures are almost $2 million higher this year than they were last, so that's a real concern when I look at where we're going to come out this current fiscal year. I know prior year we didn't actually utilize the transfer of some of the funds as well as any of the fund balance, but this year I think we're going to dip into that.
Any specific reason for the?
Well, I think what we're seeing is, you know, it comes down to things like staffing. I think we've had some real increases in compensation that are impacting the budget. When we look at in prior years, of course, as Mr. Munwin had stated previously that we had, you know, vacancies, and that was a significant benefit in terms of the budget. But you know, we're fairly staffed all the way through the departments, and that is definitely impacting our expenditures this year.
And that's forcing workers' comp to go up.
Yeah, things like that. I mean, we've seen just
Indirect
general
kind of.
inflation in prices too. So I mean, we're seeing costs that have gone up. I mean, we started out this budget year and we get to the end and we're finding CPI increased by 8%. We've not seen that rate of increase with prices in any of the previous years. So I think it's a combination of things.
And just to clarify what he's saying about the expenses being up, it's the amount that we're spending of the budget at this point in the year. So if you budget for 10 people and 5 of them are vacant, then you're 50%. And now we're seeing where we're 80, 90% full. We've never seen that before. You know, we increased entry level and other things for things in the sheriff's department and 911. And so people aren't rolling in and out of here. And it's just a change. And it's, again, in years past, we're like, well, we're going to budget $400,000 in reserve, and if we hold tight, we might not have to spend that. Well, as he said, and as the 30-minute budget presentation said, that's changed. You know, you're budgeting $100 and you're spending $99, or you might spend $101. So it's a change.
So our problem in the county hasn't necessarily been, I would say, fiscal management. It was those vacancies that was really and truly almost keeping us above water, because if the vacancies and staffing capability is almost full, then I can imagine what years past would have been if we had staffing up to the level that we have right now.
Well, when we present a budget, we fully plan on spending the reserve. So you wouldn't have, that's not necessarily the case. And so what's happened is, if you go back and, you know, we are nerds and make all these spreadsheets, you can look at a number of the years over a period of time, and you'll see where, oh, okay, this year we took 200 out of reserve. Next year we gained 100. Like this audit you just got, I think we gained
About $150,000.
$150,000 because, and I mean, not to get too detailed, but I mean, as much as y'all want to, is $29 million budget, a $13 million general fund budget, $100,000 is an incredibly small percentage of that much money. So my philosophy has been to look after the pennies and the dimes, and the dollars will take care of themselves. But no matter what you do, you're always going to have things that flex that 100 or whatever. What we're saying now is, you're more and more likely, if you say you got to have that reserve, you're going to probably spend that reserve. And we've benefited from it, up a little, down a little, up a little, down a little. And it's allowed you to maintain that big reserve, you know, the appropriate reserve. So in some ways that's a good thing. It means that you've done things where people want to work here and stay here. And that's our goal. We certainly need it in law enforcement in places where we have, you know, needs for that. But at the same time, it makes your
you don't have a buffer anymore. And other counties are facing the same issue. So it's strange times. It's a lot like 2008, Councilman Woods, I don't remember who all, some of us were, Mr. Blackman on council, and, it kind of came home.
Yeah, furloughs.
That's why it's important when we have our budget workshop, that we really look at those line items, because I don't want to get into it now, but that's the statement I want to say. Because there's not just it's other expenditures I see that I question, that's in parentheses, and I want to get more in detail in a workshop so we can kind of discuss that. So we definitely need a workshop so we can be able to have those items in front of us.
Well, that's what we usually do, so we'll do that, and we'll go as deep as you want to go.
Okay.
But most of your line items are, we'll show you, we'll give you the information in the workshop. You can draw your own conclusion.
Any other questions for Mr. Paul? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Rumman, Administrator's report.
Yes, sir. So this month, as we do every month, we recognize employees with 5 or more years of service to the county. This month in March, we have Martha McQuaig with 29 years, Beverly McKeever with 22 years, Tricia Bundy with 10 years, Don Driggers with 12 years, and Luther Brown with 21 years. We had a very successful cleanup day, and we want to thank Ms. Lawson. She had a passion for it, and she stayed after all of us and everybody to get it to happen. I think the approach of having it where folks could pick that week-long period where they had time to do it worked well. It meant that Saturday we didn't have as many people turn out, but the work got done. We collected 2.5 tons of trash and 1,005 tires. Now, once we put that dumpster down there behind the county building, it's like the Easter Bunny came in about 3 hours and it was full of tires. But tires don't have serial numbers on them, and we're just going to have to suck it up.
We had to dig them out too.
Yeah.
So we had to put them in another trailer at the convenience store.
But we have a budget for tires. We have a grant we get each year for some of that'll cover that. And it was good to get them out of the ditches.
Right.
A lot of them were in the city. And the last time we did this, we went back to the city and asked them to pay us back for it. That's up to y'all. I don't know if that's worth the effort. But anyway, more than 300 people we had on the rolls, 2.5 tons of trash, and 1,005 tires. So we appreciate everybody coming out, and I would suggest, looking at doing one in the fall again when the snakes go back in their holes, and you can do it again. But appreciate, Ms. Lawson, your passion for this.
Mr. Munderman.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the men who helped, Mr. Chris, Doug, and someone else, Donald. We were all on Ag Street. No, we were on Ardra Street, right behind the hotel and McDonald's. In that one area, which is less than a quarter of a mile, in that one area, there was 27 bags of trash, but there was 103 large beer bottles right in that area.
Man.
Now, my question for this is that the trash pickup was good and had community support. I know that Marlboro County had an ordinance in place in 1998 concerning litter pickup. I know that I've been in conversation with the sheriff department. I've been in conversation with the magistrate. Dorchester County has an ordinance in place that and the person who will fined with picking up litter, will be released from any liability. There's a process. What can we do to get that in place and use the state law? That law is already in place. We need some cameras up. DHEC will give us those cameras free in those those hot spot areas like that and all over this community. What can we do? The pickup was good, but until we can get this thing enforced, and it's going to look like this in a week's time. Yeah. I know that from the paper, they picked up paper. Within the next week, there's paper already back on Fayetteville Avenue. And it's just that the community, some people did not even want to pick up because they were, I pay taxes, I don't even need to be picking up. But because we live here, everyone, you don't know what billionaire is coming through this county just going towards the beach or going anywhere. It could be that we make our community looking nice in all areas, and that state DOT continue to keep the grass cut in these main spots, our county may look like something. And then I'm just saying, whatever laws that this county, if it's something that we have to vote on too, to put it in place, to be, release us from liability that they pick up, I do think we need to be putting something in place that will stick. High fees, not that $500, the state charges all the way up to $1,000. Whatever fees need to be put in place for littering, we need to put that in place, because we do need them to keep our county clean and green. I'm just a fanatic. I know we have an image committee. I'm not going to get into that, what the image committee needs to do, but for what us as citizens need to do. Please, let's look at putting something in place, some type of laws in place. If it means something, bringing it to us and say, this is all it needs, a first, second reading, third reading, let's put those laws in place, because it can be done.
Yes, ma'am, we got a copy of that Dorchester ordinance, so
Right.
we'll work towards that and get that to you.
And I wouldn't suggest nothing if I hadn't researched it myself.
Sure.
I'm like that, everyone. If I'm asking for something, you better believe I have spent many hours and days to research it myself to be sure that it's something that we can handle.
The difficulty we have is having the manpower to enforce it, and as you've seen, it takes a lot of that, so that's something that can come up during the budget workshop, but,
Dorchester has it where you
They're
give
using
that
them.
person their designated spot. You tell them they have 3 hours to clean this designated road. They have a porta-john. I understand we have a porta-john on the trailer. Make sure that person has water. They sign that release that they're going to be cleaning up, and we can put that in place. But I do know that the police don't have to ride around and hold a gun to them or anything. It's free will. It's non-criminals who need to pay their fines. And I understand that we have a lot of fine money that's out there that has not been collected. We need to be collecting those monies. I know that's nickels and dimes, but if it's $7,000, $10,000, that's money we can get for this county.
I agree. Well, unfortunately, we don't have any way to collect it, but I made a note to put it in the workshop.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from Mr. Mullins?
We got about
Thank you.
38 minutes worth of stuff. We'll have, the county employees will have their biggest loser contest they've had every year, where everybody has kind of a weight loss contest. It's a percentage of your weight when you start, so somebody who comes in heavy can't play a game and beat you. So Ms. Doris does that, and it's worked pretty well. The week of April 9th through 15th, which is now, is National Safety Telecommunicators Week. So if you know anybody who works in 911 or get a chance to interact with them, please thank them for what they do. They do an excellent job here, and they're critical to the safety of our citizens. They play a hand-in-hand role with law enforcement, EMS, and fire. I had an update on recreation. I think you covered most of everything on the Broad Street thing. I won't belabor it. The golf course, we have temporary sign ordered, covered up. We had talked before about having some sort of event on Memorial Day, and I think that'd be a good time to have the more permanent sign. We'll bring a couple of thoughts on that to you all to look at. Still trying to find people to work in the pro shop. If you know anybody who'd like to work part-time. Waiting on a cost estimate for the pool. That is dragged on. We need to make that happen. And then I would request the chairman, not necessarily right now, but appoint that golf committee off of that information of people that came, so those folks can have input. There's a pretty steady group out there that has, has a lot of thoughts. And as far as phase 2, I call it phase 2. No specific word on the request from the the state budget, but I know that everything has crossed over where they start to work on them together, and I think that's progress. And I'm trying to look up and see if ours is staying in there and call Ms. Hennigan, but no news is good news, I believe, in that situation.
A committee is already signed with the golf. We have a golf committee already.
No, ma'am, the committee meeting the meeting you came to with, I provided that information to the chairman, and chance that you could come up with a committee off of that, or maybe add some folks to it. So that's y'all's baby, and at some point we want to try to get that done, certainly by Memorial Day.
Any other questions for the administrator? All right, we have a citizen request. Ms. Vivian Lee, if you'd please come forward.
Hello, I'm Vivian Lee. I'm the president of the Pilot Club of Dennisville. And tonight I'm here to tell you that I'm not going to ask for any money. And you're not going to have to spend any money, because the Pilot Club of Dennisville has partnered with the Marlboro County Sheriff's Department to implement Project Lifesaver, which is a search and rescue program. Deputy Green, my partner here, and we'll explain more about that, but if you choose to make any donations personally, we would appreciate that with the Pilot Club Venusville Foundation. We do have our Christmas tree on the courthouse square every year, a light tree. Instead of supporting Lifeline program now, we have changed over to Project Lifesaver. And we feel like it will be a huge benefit to the citizens of Marlboro County. So I'll turn it over to you.
I know we're supposed to get 3 minutes for the public thing, I'm gonna start my 3 minutes now. Because it's a lot of information. So Project Lifesaver is actually 1,300 agencies across the United States, Canada, and Australia. How it works is there's a transmitter, and I don't have one with me tonight, but it's about the size of a watch. It comes with a band. It's not able to be removed by the person wearing it, and the whole point of Project Lifesaver is to help people who are mentally incapacitated in some way, whether that's autism, Alzheimer's, any brain disorder that could affect somebody's the clarity and thought. To date, I think on March 23rd was the last search, and it lasted for 17 minutes. The big highlight of Project Lifesaver is that they say an average search for someone lasts 9 hours. Anybody who wanders, whether it's a child or an elderly person or just anyone else who doesn't have the mental capabilities to be aware. And at 9 hours per search, it's estimated that it's $2,500 per hour to search for that person. As for law enforcement agencies, fire and rescue, media, news coverage, things of that nature, the average time to find somebody with Project Lifesaver is 31 minutes. The effectiveness rate is 100% right now with Project Lifesaver, and they just made their 4,000th week. I'm gonna say week because we are part of it now. They just made their 4,000th search and rescue mission this year in March on the 23rd, like I said, and that is a 100% success rate in finding people. And the way it works is via the transmitter, which is on the bracelet again, is smaller than a wristwatch. It's able to be tracked with older technology used to be used for hunting dogs. It started out with in a park service in Virginia, where rangers would give out these transmitters, and when hikers would come in and say, if you get lost, if you're not back by the time your reservation is over, we'll come look for you, we can find you. And I do have the equipment, but I'm, again, trying not to eat into too much time. But how this all came about, and as Vivian said, this is great for the citizens of Marlboro County because of their donations and because of the, I don't know how to say it, the connections that Sheriff McNeil offers and the communities that he has people in place who also use this program. They've already donated. We asked for just a quote of what would affect 10 people in our community. Pilot Club was able to sponsor twice that. So as of right now, we have the funding. And I don't want to name it because I'll let her do that if she chooses to. But we could potentially help 20 individuals in the community right now with that equipment. And in addition to that, we also had a gentleman come down from Project Lifesaver. Again, it's a national corporation, or 501c3, who trained 6 of us on how to do it, not only to be a tracker, but to also teach the class. So now we can go out and look for people. We can also teach others how to go out and look for people. And it's a universal system. So if one of our citizens goes to another state that has Project Lifesaver, again, 1,300 agencies, those people can track our people using their equipment. It's a universal thing. So again, without the support of the Pilot Club and Sheriff McNeil allowing us to do these things that might not have been done in the past, and try new things, I think we really will benefit the citizens of Marlboro County. It makes me proud to be part of it anyway.
Thank you.
If y'all have any questions, feel free to ask, but I know I'm over my 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
I got one question.
We'll be at the downtown market, by the way.
We will, on Saturday.
On Saturday?
How do somebody, they contact y'all, or we know somebody, y'all just come? Would anybody qualify, or they gotta be of, limited, capabilities?
So actually, we had a gentleman who's gone missing, I'm back up again. We had a gentleman who's gone missing twice in the past year or so. Last summer, he went missing. missing for like 8 or 9 hours. And we ended up locating him with assistance from another agency, $500 from his home in the woods and thick brush. And when the sheriff walked up to him, he asked him to get out from in front of the TV because he was totally checked out, thought he was in his living room watching TV. So our pilot, not to coin that, but we'd like to take it to him and his family and have him be our first citizen who actually to start and implement the program. After that, we're going to have it set up to, if you go on Project Lifesaver's website, you can reach out for there or simply call it the sheriff's office. I'm going to be the one doing the administrative side of that thing, those things. I think Lieutenant Wheeler might be doing some of the going out. The other side of it is that every 60 days, the battery has to be changed on it. So we'll be in contact with every person who's on this program every 60 days because you have to cut the band and put in a new battery. So you got to put a new band on. So we'll also be checking in with all these people that might not have somebody, another set of eyes checking in on them and try to build that relationship to maybe they'll see us whenever they do get lost and they will know us or they will at least want to come to us. I think that's pretty much it. If I answered your question, I'm not sure if I did or not.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
All
I
right,
don't
now-
usually comment, but that sounds like a very good program, because, as we looked at, overtime, I know the sheriff and, on searches, you could go for, I remember 6-7 years ago, y'all remember one little girl and a boy, I think it went for almost 7 days, or 6 or 7 days, whenever out out behind Walmart, and so who knows what it costs, but if you can find somebody in less than 8 minutes, it could be a direct result for us on budget, for the sheriff, for overtime, for man hours. So it is. So if you look at it like that, thank you to the Pilot Club and all for that. So
Thank you very
Ms.
much.
Gurley, I might have to be able to help you out with the air pack thing too.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we have recognition of council members, but we also need to do an executive session. Would y'all like to do the council first, do that last? Okay. Do we have a motion to go into executive session for personnel matters?
So move.
In a second. Second. Okay, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, we are back out of executive session. Motion was made by Dr. Johnson, seconded by Councilman Woods. And we're back in open session. No action was taken. We did review the county administrator position profile. And is there a motion that we approve this profile?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, it is unanimous that we approve this county administrator position profile, and we will begin advertising. Are there any council members that would like to?
I am fine.
Ms. Lawson?
I'm fine, thank you for everyone attending, thank you.
Would like to let everybody know that May the 6th, McCall has their Mayfest that they do every year, always a big crowd. And I think the hours are from 10 to 4. I know that the Church of God, they've already got their big advertisement, they're gonna have collared sandwiches that day, and usually the lines from here to the bottom of the hill out there, people trying to get those sandwiches. But anyway, that is coming up, that's the big thing, always big for McCall, you know, they try and put on a good festival, and normally have a very big crowd, so I'd like for everybody to support McCall.
What time is that, Mr. Odom?
From 10 to 4 on May the 6th.
Okay.
All right, well, with that being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
And a second? All in favor? It's unanimous.